Hi, I'm Dylan Mangel with Nebraska Extension, and white mold is showing up in soybean fields across the state. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about what soybean white mold is, how we can manage it, and right now, most importantly, I'm going to tell you when you should go out there and spray a fungicide to control white mold in Nebraska soybeans. So it comes down to white mold season when it's starting to get wet, it's humid, we've got beans beginning to flower, that's when they're susceptible. But it's not only that wet, humid, flowering, but you also need the white mold to be present. If the white mold or any one of those components aren't present, we're not going to have white mold of soybean. So first of all, I just want to show everyone what white mold on soybeans looks like. You can see this picture here. It's got white mycelial growth, white fungal growth on those plants, and you can see little black structures are starting to form in this white mycelial growth on the stem, and I'll show in a little bit they're actually forming inside the stem as well. But right now we are not seeing any of that in the fields, and we're not going to see any of that until about August. Maybe late July we could see some of it. Right now what we're looking at is this. This is a field with corn residue on the ground. That's there because this field was in corn last year. But we have sclerotia, or these white mold survival structures, basically little balls of that fungus that have fallen off the plants and they're on the ground, just laying on the surface. They tend to float, so as rain happens they'll kind of work themselves to the top of the soil. These ones are larger than I think a lot of sclerotia that I've seen, but the big and small are out there. These will sit like this for years, so they can stay there. They will basically wait for the perfect conditions, and they're going to grow a little mushroom out of the top. Here's another picture of those. You can see the residue. Believe me, they're under that residue as well. Here's some smaller ones just scattered on the surface of the soybean field. They're a ball of fungal tissue, so if you break them open, it's white on the inside, but that outside is dark because that melanization helps them survive longer in the sunlight. It protects that inner tissue. Here's a picture, you can just see more of them laying on the ground in these beans. It's there, but remember those beans aren't susceptible yet because they're not reached flowering. What's going to happen soon is a little mushroom-like structure is going to grow out of the top of those overwintering structures, the sclerotia. And here's some of those mushrooms starting to form. It's like a mushroom, except instead of the spores coming out under the cap, they're going to come out on top of it. So you can see that cap forming. Here's a picture of a fully formed one. That's a corn stalk next to it, so you can get an idea of the size. But basically, individually, those little mushrooms are no bigger than the tip of your pinky. They tend to grow in a cluster because they're all growing out of a single sclerotia. If you pick one of those up, bring it to the lab or wait. We can grow those just on some wet sand basically. These are going to form, and then if we put them in the right conditions, just like they would have in a soybean field, they're going to make spores. So here's a video of that spore release. If we put that lid back on there and give this a day or so to recharge and make new spores, it's just going to do that again. So if we've got several days of wet conditions, it'll just keep releasing spores over and over and over, millions of them. They tend to shoot out of there, so if this is growing on the soil surface, they'll blow up, but their highest likelihood is reaching lower soybean flowers. So as we have flowers lower down on the plant, those are most likely to get infected. And most of these spores are going to stay trapped under that canopy in a single field. They can blow longer distances, but you could guess the concentration of spores is going to be highest in an area with a lot of these mushrooms. So we really don't see white mold blowing long distance from field to field. It tends to stay where it's at. That's good news because we're not going to see it long distance dispersal. It's bad news because it's going to stay where it's at, so we really can't get rid of it. Here's what those spores look like under a microscope. They're called ascospores. They're small, they're simple, they're not very durable. So if it's warm outside, and if they land on a flower petal or a leaf, they're not really going to do anything. They're just going to die. If it's wet, if we have humid conditions like we've been having, those are going to land. They're going to have protection from the sun. They're going to have moisture to keep them hydrated, and they'll do better at infecting that plant. Here's what we see next. And actually, here's probably a little closer to what we see next. You see you've got a section of that plant stem that's dying. It also has that white fungal growth on the outside. Before we even get to this point, you'll just see the dying, and it'll start to turn brown, like a paper bag color brown. In time, though, it's going to spread from the infection point both up and down the stem. So if you see that section, you can kind of see in the middle of it, and you could guess there was a flower here. That's probably the flower that got infected, and then it went up and down. This plant's going to die. It's not going to do much. This is the sort of a pocket in a field that the combine will go through, and you'll just see that yield monitor drop off. On the outside of the stem and on the inside of the stem, we have these sclerotia. Bigger, oddly shaped ones grow on the outside of the stem. On the inside of the stem is where we get these elongated mouse feces, mouse dropping looking sclerotia as well. So those are in there. The big ones are on the outside. That's the full cycle of this pathogen. So in 2023, a lot of the fields that had white mold grew these sclerotia. They hung out on the plant. Combine came through, noticed a huge drop off in yield, threshed those plants, spit those sclerotia right out the back, back into the same field. They're just going to wait. 2024, there was corn in these fields. Nothing happened. They just kind of sat there and waited. 2025, beans are going back into the heavy white mold fields in Nebraska. If some growers out there decided to go corn for a second year in these heavy white mold fields, it doesn't matter. They're going to be waiting next year when you come back as well. They'll sit there for many years. The ones I'm looking at this year, they're from 2023. They look like they're no older than when they first fell off that plant. They'll wait for a long time, and they're so hard. You try to break them, it's pretty difficult to break them in half. Okay, so that's sort of what white mold is. The potential yield loss from this can be immense. Some people call this the worst soybean disease we have. If we get foliar diseases, we'll see things taper off, we'll see yields drop. But with white mold, you can lose everything. If a plant gets infected, it's going to die. So you can lose a lot of yield to white mold. And if this cycle keeps building, you're just going to end up with more and more white mold in the soil. Okay, so what are some resources for white mold? We've got to get down to basically how you can manage this and when you can control for it. So if you go to Crop Protection Network, that's a great tool that a lot of us pathologists got together and built across Midwestern land-grant universities. This is basically an extension project that all of these extension agents are contributing to. So there's some good information here on white mold. One of these things just shows the disease cycle. So here's a rendering of those pictures I just showed you. Sclerotia, they grow the mushrooms. Mushrooms make spores, infect the flowers, plant dies. More sclerotia grow. That's pretty simple. So what's the first step we can do about this? You want to think about, there's sort of 3 keys when it comes to managing any disease. The first one is genetics. You got to put a variety in there that's got a good rating for the disease you have. Field notes are important for that. You need to know where you had white mold in the past so you can target a variety specifically for white mold. The seed catalogs, they have in there ratings on different diseases. So in a white mold area, pick one of those out and start that season off right with that. After you put a variety in there, there's cultural control you do is the other category, and chemical control is the third category. Cultural control would come down to things like planting timing, plant population, row spacing. So 2 of the things that can help with white mold is row spacing. Growers would move in some places to 15-inch rows on beans. I've seen growers move back to 30-inch rows on beans specifically with white mold. You open that canopy more, you get more air through there. You're going to delay your canopy closure a little bit, so that'll help with white mold. You might have related weed problems associated with that, so you've really got to choose where you want to target your management, what your worst problems are. Plant population can help as well. White mold tends to be highly pocketed, but these pockets can get really big, so it's not a small area problem. But oftentimes it might come in where certain wind patterns are. It might come behind a tree line. In those areas you could lower your plant population, just again to increase some flow through that canopy. Chemical control is where we're at now. I want to be clear that the plants are susceptible when flowers are present, not before, not after, and the products, the chemical control you spray on that is going to protect the flowers. When it comes to fungicides, it's going to prevent that initial infection, and you've got to time that just perfectly. So when we get early flowers, like right now, if we've got just a few early flowers out there, if you're not seeing those mushrooms present in your field, and if you don't have the cool, wet conditions required to yield this significant white mold disease, you might want to delay that slightly because more flowers are going to form, and a later application will protect more flowers. Now, if you're in a situation where you've got just a handful of flowers, but you've got a lot of white mold spores flying out there, that's tough. You've got to make a decision early. I think sort of the best time research has shown for spraying tends to be late R1, early R2, after you get most of the flowers on the plant. Then following up potentially 14 days later, depending on the significance of your white mold problem in your field. If you know where these pockets are though, and you don't want to spend money on their whole farm when it comes to these applications, target those pockets. It's one of those areas where an investment in some of these products is likely to pay off. So I'll just show some quick tools on chemical control. This is a publication we put out through the Crop Protection Network. It's a fungicide efficacy for control of soybean foliar diseases. If you come down here, we've got a table, and this one just came out February of 2025. It's where we took all of our data from 2024, that last field season. We reviewed it, we added it to our large pool of data because we're constantly testing products at universities across the Midwest on white mold and on other diseases, and we're putting in here how these products are working. So if you look on this y-axis, you've got the product mode of action. Most of these products are group 3s, the triazoles, group 7s, the SDHIs, and the group 11s, the strobilurins or the QOIs. It also starts off with individual mode of action products, and as it expands down, you'll see we'll get products that are multi-mode of action. There's a second page. Now we're getting to the point where we've got a lot of products on the market that are three-way products, group 3, 7, and 11. The benefit of using these products together is a pathogen is going to have to evolve to overcome 3 products at once if it's going to do that. The chances of that are extremely small, but if you put out a single mode of action product, it can evolve to overcome that one, and then it can evolve to overcome another one later, and it can build up tolerance much faster. Mixed mode of action products are what's going to prevent us from losing the effectiveness of all of these modes of action. So that's the benefit of using those. The downside of those obviously is they're more expensive. So think about fungicide resistance when you're doing this, and think about these ratings. So this is products, we've got active ingredients, trade names, tested rates, so what we're using to get these results, and the diseases are here across the spot. We've got brown spot, frog eye leaf spot, soybean rust, white mold. Now a lot of these aren't problems in the Midwest or northern US, they're more southern problems, for example. But right now, white mold is the issue of the day when it comes to applying a treatment to manage. And you can see we've got a list of ratings for all these products. A lot of these are not labeled specifically for white mold. Some of these, like this one, that's Approach, is rated good. Some of these are rated fair. We've got goods, very goods. We have some unknowns. Well, why do we have unknowns? We haven't had it tested yet in our trials. We can only do so many products every year, so we're trying to stay on top of this, keep rotating products through. We want to have answers for all of these products, just so you know you can pull something, you can grab a product, and you can know it's going to be effective. A bad thing would be having a white mold field and then going and spending money on a product and then putting it out and having it be something that's just not going to control the white mold. That is clearly not going to pay. So find something that works well. There's several things that work well, so you could find whatever your dealer representative has that works best in here or works best for you, and put that on your white mold areas. So use tools like this to target those areas. As far as chemical control, the top of the line is Endura. It's been around for a while. It's very effective for white mold, but notice it doesn't really have efficacy against other fungal pathogens. So it's highly specific. We have other tools out here, other tools in here that are more broad spectrum. So you can find something. If you've got competing issues, you can target both of it. But if you've got a white mold field, I think spending money in Nebraska, white mold is where I would invest if you've lost money to white mold in the past. There's other options out there. We've got biologicals coming on the scene quickly. We also are running uniform fungicide trials at the universities for biologicals. Problem now is so many are flushing onto the market. We're doing as good as we can to get data as fast as we can on those. There's a lot of stuff out there, and I don't think it's all going to work equally as well. So take time, talk to local advisors, figure out what's working well for growers in your area, and try some new things if you'd like to do that. One product that has been around for a while, Contans. This is, it's not chemical control season for Contans. So you've got to think about how these products work and follow the labels. This one, for example, it's to be applied in the off season. So after soybean harvest, those sclerotia fall to the ground, go out and apply then. The benefit here is it might break down some of those sclerotia, so when the season starts, you won't have as many. I just want to mention quickly, we've got some other resources on the Crop Protection Network. We've got yield loss calculators where we've got 25 years or more of data on how big of a problem these diseases have been for different regions or different states across the country. We've got severity estimation tools, so you can go through and learn more about some of these diseases. For corn, we've got a fungicide return on investment calculator. Think hard about ROIs for all of these things this year, for sure. All kinds of stuff. So one thing is crop disease forecasting tool that's coming online as well as we build up data in that system. Okay, so I'm an extension specialist in Nebraska focusing on soybean diseases, and a big driver of disease is going to be weather. If it was, last weekend we had 3 days of 100-degree days, I can tell you for a fact white mold wasn't doing anything for those 3 days. Any of those mushrooms were drying out. We were losing soil moisture. They're not doing anything. But I can also tell you we got rain after that, and today in parts of Nebraska we have those mushrooms growing. Here's the 7-day precipitation for the state. You can see, big differences, but a lot of areas got decent moisture. Especially, this area here, sort of from Kearney to the northeast. I kind of think about that as our white mold belt. We've got the rain-fed areas. We've got the rain-fed areas that have traditionally struggled with it and are going to struggle with it still, especially after getting some of these massive rainfalls in the last 7 days. What is this? 6 to 8 inches in large areas here. That's going to add a lot of soil moisture back, and it's going to drive a lot of disease. But we've also got these irrigated areas, and they're probably not going to be irrigating anytime soon with the decent rainfall we've had this year, but they don't need to. You could still drive disease with that soil moisture. The problem with irrigation is it tends to just make it worse once you do get there. Especially in areas where you've got sandier soils. White mold tends to love that. I think it has a lot to do with that center pivot turning on and just staying on, making loops all season. That can just kind of feed this problem and keep it growing. That's our 7-day precip. If you're thinking about making an application, we've also got to think about upcoming weather and wind. So we might get more storms tonight, and we've got wet fields. It's hard to get out there and make some of these applications. And again, I want to say this is highly dependent on flowering. So if you've got just a couple flowers out there, I'd save your money and wait a little while. If you've got decent flowering and you've got white mold you know about and you can see those mushrooms coming, it might be time to go. So here's just a bit of a wind forecast over the next couple days. What do we got? I mean, it looks like we're going to have opportunities Friday. Might get a little windy on Saturday. We've got opportunities as far as calm wind coming up to spray. So as long as you can get into some of those fields. Okay, so now looking ahead into the next week, what's a good timing for this? I think a lot of the beans are a little bit delayed. I don't think a lot of them are ready for this today. We've got some time to have some flower development. But if we look at the forecast, the conditions are right for the white mold. The white mold is there. So we got 2 of the 3 things we need for disease. Just waiting on those flowers to get ready for those plants to be more susceptible. Will we maintain disease conditions for the week going forward? Here's just a forecast. I grabbed this from Seward, sort of the center of sort of the irrigated white mold country, or the edge of it as we get into it. And conditions are good for white mold now, and we've got again on Sunday more rain coming. That's going to keep us in those white mold conditions again until the holiday weekend. Into the 4th and 5th, we're going to see rain again. So it's going to be, that cycle is going to maintain there. We're set up for a heavy white mold season. So think carefully about how and when you want to apply those applications. Same thing if we go up north, Concord, that's north of Wayne, into that rain-fed white mold area. We're wet. We've got a lot of soil moisture in the last couple days up there, so it's going to stay wet. And we're getting some more rain. Not as much as down near Seward, but it's going to maintain white mold conditions. So basically we've got the disease, we've got the weather for it, we're going to have susceptible plants. If you're going to make investments in fungicides in Nebraska this year, I think white mold is where you should focus if you have a history of white mold. Late R1, early R2 seems to be the optimal timing for that. Watch those plants for flowering and think about those applications as protecting those flowers. If you have any questions, we've got some more resources online at cropprotectionnetwork.org. We also have Nebraska resources online at cropwatch.unl.edu. You can go up here, find plant disease under the management section. We've got areas on soybean as well as other resources for the state. And if you have questions, you can contact me, Dylan Mangel, Extension Plant Pathologist. Contact information on the page. Thank you very much.